Hello ladies and gents to another Fortnite video. Today's going to be a little bit different. Today we're going to go through my top 5 heroes that need to be reworked in the glorious game of For Honor. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into it. Yorm is probably one of the most talked about heroes to get a rework. This is mainly due to her abysmal offense, which is mainly centered around Stamina Bully. After the CCU, this pretty much became, well, outdated, let's just say. We're going to go ahead and start straight up with her chains. Now, her chains consist of things along the nature like light, light, light unblockable heavy, or light into unblockable stamina drain. These, of course, can all be interchanged with things along the nature of zone, or heavy into light and things along that nature. To start off, her light attacks are 500 milliseconds. As long as you're not playing against somebody who has a potato brain, these are usually fairly easy parried, which also includes her second undodgeable light attack that's supposed to be used as sort of a mix-up, kind of similar to how BP and his bash and undodgeable heavy work. Now, her unblockable heavy attack is extremely easy to dodge. It has a terrible hit span, meaning you are most likely never going to hit anybody who's dodging, and it also means you cannot external like other characters like JJ, BP, and etc. And it does have one redeeming quality, in that being that you can wall splat if it lands and your opponent is near a wall. But this character is so easily countered when it comes to the offense, you can either walk back to avoid her offense or simply dodge roll away from the wall, or unlock sprint, however you want to put it. Now, the next points we're going to point out is just simply another point on her offense, which is her stamina drain. As I stated before, the CCU update has pretty much made it to where her stamina drain offense is no longer really that good. She needs something a little bit better now, maybe some type of pressure after her bash, or maybe even have the bash do damage. I mean, it's not a problem for Shigoki's headbutt to do it, or even Aramusha's little boop the snoop move to do it. I don't see why it would be a problem. The next thing I have to mention when it comes to Jormungandr, and probably the most important one, is her reactable bash that is 600 milliseconds. It is easily read and easily punished. No matter if you land the move or if you whiff the move, you can get punished for it. If you whiff the move, then no matter what option you want to select, the opponent can merely light you out of it. If you land it, then you have to go for an undodgeable light attack, because an unblockable heavy means that you can get lighted out of it, as there is no hyper armor on it, and it is an easy way to get out of any of her pressure. She is an easily countered character that can be countered merely by walking backwards, as both her ranges for her guard break, her neutral bash, and any moves along the nature of her light attacks, maybe not so much her heavy attacks, can be easily back dodged, unlock rolled away from, or like I stated before, walked back from. So if you are planning to play Jormungandr, I commend you, because this character can be really good in the right hands, but for most players, they won't touch this character with a 10-foot pole until the rework comes. Nusha would have to be the personal one for me, as she is my second favorite Wulin, right behind Shaolin, of course. The first thing I'm going to have to mention about her, because it pisses me off the most, is going to have to be her deflect. It's a simple fix, just make it unblockable. I can't tell you how many times I've landed this deflect and it has gotten blocked. It is probably one of the most dissatisfying feelings on the planet, and a deflect is supposed to be satisfying. There are a few other things I do have to mention in terms of Nusha's kit that might need to be adjusted. First off, her trap mix-up. Her trap mix-up consists of 3 different options, which would be trap, feint into guard break, or to let the heavy fly. In a way, some Nusha mains say it makes her heavies safe, heavy quotation marks. Now, of course, if you're playing against a good player, they're going to be able to read you every single time. Now, this of course retorts to the next point, her light attacks. Her light attacks are easily read, but she's designated mostly as a light spam character. Now, of course, the way to use her lights properly are to, of course, land heavy attacks and then delay the light attacks to somewhat make them unreactable, but otherwise, her light attacks are easily read and easily parried. Nusha's offense is kind of bland, I would say, and kind of boring. So you might want to just help out with that trap mix up a little bit by maybe making the heavies a little bit quicker. I don't necessarily know how to rework Nusha properly while keeping her trap mechanic in, but she definitely needs some love from the developers. Next thing I'm going to have to simply mention is her feats. Now, tier 1's good. Obviously, everybody's going to run Bounty Hunter or Duelist even. Duelist is really good in game modes like Elimination and Skirmish, if anybody even still plays those. And her tier 2, being the Caltrops is a great AoE and a great minion clear. Her tier 3 is where things get a little shaky, slip through in Thread of Fate and things along that nature. Those are decent feats, I would say. But the real pet peeve of mine for this character has to be her tier 4 feat Infection, which was given to Warmonger as her first tier, known as Corruption Blade. Now, I do have a way to maybe fix this feat a little bit. I do want to go a little bit more in depth on how to rework Nusha, maybe make some ideas of what can make the character a little bit better, but that's for a separate video altogether. But for tier 4, I believe maybe we should make the word infection actually mean something. The same way Warmonger has Corruption Blast, where everybody gets corrupted, what if we made it to where when Nusha locks infection onto somebody, everybody in that AoE also gets the infection status effect? That might actually help out with tier 4. Next thing I have to go with for Nusha is, of course, the fact that she needs dodge cancels. Alright, I know we're a little tired of hearing that dodge cancels are needed and things along that nature, but I believe that it would be a little bit of a help for her to be able to dodge cancel. If she misses a trap, that should be the only thing that I believe she should be able to dodge cancel out of. But like I said, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on Nusha's reworks. To reiterate and to review, the things that make her bad should just be that her trap mix-up needs to be a little bit better, her feats need to have some attention placed to them, her deflect needs to be unblockable, and the final thing I can mention at this point is her zone attack, which either needs to have hyper armor on it, or it needs to be undodgeable or unblockable, as it is too slow, and it's only good in 4s. Lawbringer has been needing some help ever since, I would even say, his first rework. I mean, when his first rework came out, he was still somewhat decent, but he pretty much fell down the rabbit hole after they took the hyper armor off of his bash. Now, some things I do need to point out about Lawbringer include the fact that he really has no opener. I understand majority of characters have maybe a quick bash, or their light attacks are fast enough. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at Lawbringer's light attacks. Lawbringer's light attacks are unbearably slow, and though they are enhanced on both the right and left side, they are unenhanced on the top. It's another circumstance where unless you're playing against somebody who has a potato brain, they should be able to parry your light attacks just fine. His bash is also incredibly slow, making it extremely easy to dodge on reaction. Usually the only way you get hit by this bash is if it's as a counterattack. Even then, characters with dodge cancel recoveries are able to dodge it very, 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 very easily, or after a heavy attack whenever the Lawbringer goes into his quote-unquote mix-up. He does have another bash, I'm sure you guys all know this one, the long arm, the great meme move, the extremely satisfying move to land. The only way that this bash is ever viable is if you land the tech out of a guard break. That's the only way this move is ever viable, so unless they find a way to speed it up, I really believe that this move is going to disappear, unfortunately, if the character ever is to get reworked. The next thing to mention in terms of Lawbringer is how god-awful his stamina is. After about 2 heavy attacks, you need to stand there and pretty much hold down in your shell as the opponent pretty much bombards you. Now, of course, Lawbringer does have some good things along the nature of probably the best out-of-stamina punish in the entire game, but other than that, he doesn't really have much. He needs a predictable opponent to be good, and it encourages defensive play, which is not fun. Now, of course, I'm super afraid that when this character gets reworked, they're going to just slap some hyper armor on him, which we've seen them do before with a plethora of characters that are known for nothing but their hyper armor now. So Lawbringer, on the other hand, it's just to rerun again. No opener, terrible bash, terrible stamina, needs predictable opponents, encourages defensive play, has easy light attacks, and all around, just for one of the most badass characters in the game, I would love to see rise to the top again. Valkyrie is simply outdated, with the first talking point of course being her light attacks. Her light attacks are very easily parried, very easy to see, and very easily predict. This is usually because she decides to wind back before she throws it. Kind of the same problem other characters like Nobushi have. Of course, she does this because she has crushing counters. Now, of course, if you decide to throw an opening light attack and somehow you manage to land it against a good player, then that typically means you should go for a heavy attack. Because if you decide to throw a second or even maybe luckily a third light attack, it is practical suicide, as most opponents are able to read that. And you understand that the third light attack in her string is usually 400 milliseconds on the top, and then the 2 sides are able to wall splat, but most of the time these are going to get parried and are not very useful. Now, of course, her other moves along the nature of her soft feint into bash are easily read, and of course have the Kinsei palm strike effect, which pretty much means when you miss the bash, you're either going to go for a light attack or you're going to go for a heavy attack, because most of the time the opponent is going to want to punish you either by parrying that light attack or guard breaking you should you dare to try to throw a heavy attack. But most of the time that heavy attack has good enough startup to where the guard break will just bounce right off of them. This could be made a little bit better to be a bit more incorporated into her kit. I know we're all tired of shield bashes and things along that nature, but maybe instead of making it more of a soft feint, it goes back into how it was maybe previously before. For those who don't remember, before the rework, all the way back in like I think it was season 5 or season 6 for Valkyrie, you would land a heavy and then go into a shield bash. Now this is of course before the CCU update, whenever everything was still reactable and it was completely boring. Next thing I gotta point out, her zone attack. If you somehow manage to get the first attack out without either getting parried, yes, she does have the soft feint ability, but that is practically about it with Valkyrie. Valkyrie's zone attack, excuse me. She, of course, can feign it and go into a guard break after her zone attack, which is the same thing with her heavy attacks, but at least her heavy attacks have a bit faster speed, should I say. She has not very good stamina, which pretty much means that after a few mix-ups, she is not necessarily going to be able to throw anything. She's going to have to sit there with maybe a little bit of green left as she decides to regenerate. She has poor defense as well. I understand she has one of the best deflects in the game, where she's able to get a guard break, and I don't know if I want to call it a deflex, it's more of a superior block, and of course the shoulder pin. But you are vulnerable during that dodge. While the rest of the characters in the game have a little bit of blocking during that dodge, Valkyrie's guard completely disappears. Meaning, if a character were to say, like Tiandi throws his finisher heavy, which usually lands because it has a great hit span, it's going to land no matter which area you dodge. You could dodge towards the attack thinking that your character is just going to block it. Well, it's going to actually land against you. She has terrible guard break range. It's just absolutely abysmal. You do have the dodge forward guard break, but most of the time people are going to read that from a mile away. Having an extra step for your guard break usually makes it a little bit more difficult to land. But Valkyrie is just one of those characters, like alongside characters like Lawbringer, I would love to see at the top again. I remember when she got buffed back in patch 1.03 when everybody was whining about how strong she was. Now people just simply complain about how she doesn't get any attention from the devs and hasn't since I believe season 6. Now, honestly, you could probably put a different amount of characters in this spot. I personally decided to go with Warlord just because I'd like to see his kit get a little bit more versatility. Maybe some additional chains, or maybe find maybe a different way to give him a different bash, because the headbutt, don't get me wrong, as funny as it looks, maybe we could be able to incorporate that shield bash he gets off of light parries a little bit better. But Warlord, like I stated, he's just a little outdated. He needs a little bit more. Maybe give him a light heavy light chain, or a heavy light heavy chain, something along that nature. His stamina cost makes it to where he can definitely dish out attacks, but he has to wait for a little bit. I believe there are some ideas I could have to maybe make him a little bit more intricate, like I was stating before. He's more into his bash chain offense and things along that nature. He's definitely a bash reliant hero. So for starters, I figured I would maybe make his all guard a little bit better. Maybe we could give him a Black Prior effect, where instead of having an undodgeable heavy, he has an unblockable heavy, making it a little bit better. Maybe we can make it to where he can cancel his recoveries into all guard. I mean, everybody else who has an all guard apparently is able to do this. Why don't we have it do with Warlord? Of course, I would also like to see his charge get buffed, because when it got nerfed, man, I feel so terrible for you Warlord mains. You're not really able to land that anymore. Same with the Raiders charge, but at least that one lands more often than the Warlord's charge. Like I stated before, this spot could probably be taken with a few other characters along the lines. Personally, for this part, I could probably see Warlord getting a little bit of attention, you know, making his kit a bit more fun. I could maybe even see, I'm probably going to get absolutely crucified for this one, Griffin getting reworked. His kit is very bland and basic and boring, I would say. Don't get me wrong, it's very effective, but I feel like after we get done reworking characters to make them better, we should start reworking characters to make them for fun, which includes characters like Griffin and Warlord, maybe even Tiandi to some extent, because his kit is just a little bit bland, I would say. I love the dodge like water mechanic, but the strong style king of the Wulin right now is definitely Shaolin. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Any constructive criticisms or suggestions, I'll be sure to reply to them as quickly as I possibly can. And as always, you guys have a wonderful day. And while you're down there, why don't you go ahead and let me know some characters you would like to see reworked. This is merely my list, in my opinion, so obviously everything in my video doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be concrete. But like I said before, you guys have a wonderful day.